Is Girls Frontline 2 Exilium a good gacha game? How generous is the gacha? How brutal is the grind? How heavy is the fan service? Why are the feed textures so detailed? Most of these questions will receive answers in this video. Over the past week, I tried out Girls Frontline 2, and now I want to go over my first impressions in a non-sponsored review. Welcome, I am Psyche, and let's take a look at the next big gooner gacha game of 2024. So GFL2 has been out in China for a while. It was only about a week ago that the global version launched. It's the successor to the original, and while I haven't played it yet, I do have plans to. The game is developed by Mika Team, and during its runtime, it's had its share of drama with the Chinese players. Of course, this is not the video to talk about the drama, but I think porting the game to global is possibly one of the best decisions they ever made, and part of me wonders why they didn't do it sooner. The Western audience has very different cultural expectations than those in the East. Most Western players couldn't care less about any NTR debacles. On the contrary, some even find it weird and cringe. Mika Team is starting off with a clean slate with the global servers, and the server's launch has gone off without any technical issues or controversies. A very strong start. Also, this game loads up in like 10 seconds, which I'm impressed by. Exilium chronologically takes place sometime after the events of the first game, and the GFL universe is extremely vast, spanning across multiple titles. Trying to explain it well as an outsider is next to impossible. So I'll just say this. You play as the commander with a squadron of elite android soldiers known as dolls, and you're out on the road to complete certain contracts. Yeah, I skipped the story, how could you tell? Anyways, you will pick between a male or female avatar, select a suitable name for the commanding officer, and off you go. The commander does indeed have a face and their own voice and personality. In fact, the entire main story is voice acted, and there are these animated cutscenes that I'm fairly certain are pre-rendered, since with these graphically intensive scenes, some phones may not be able to run them well. There's actually quite a number of these animated scenes, so they clearly didn't gimp on the budget here. The gameplay is 3D turn-based tactical strategy. Many people compare it to XCOM but a gacha game, and that's kind of exactly what this is. Your dolls will act first, where you can position them somewhere and use a skill. Taking cover will grant something called Stability Index, which is a passive damage reduction when taking damage. However, upon taking enough hits, the SI is depleted and they will take full damage, or is just completely ignored if they're not in cover or the opposing attack is flanking them. This also goes for enemies, so you generally want to cover all angles and move behind enemy covers, so that you can ignore the Stability Index. There's quite a lot of creative ways in the level designs, like elevated platforms, where you get a really nice vantage point to ignore certain enemy covers. There's a lot of flavors to the playstyles you can do, like snipers that can't move very far but have tremendous range, and those with extra actions or AoE skills. I would say don't expect a same level of depth as XCOM, but it's mainly the gameplay style that I find interesting, since I don't believe any other gachas has had this exact formula before. You can put the game on auto, but the only thing I found is that the AI in this game is not the brightest. Enemies that just don't do anything, the game dumping each doll's most powerful move first, then just parking them in the middle of nowhere. It doesn't seem to know very well how to utilize cover or positional advantages. This is mostly fine if you greatly exceed the level suggestions, but you'll likely run into some challenge once in a while. Something else I fear is that if the enemy AI doesn't get smarter when you go into challenge content, then the outcome of the battle is more determined by your stats and builds as opposed to your talents and skill as a player. As you know, in most turn-based games, taking one turn instead of two, or defeating the enemy in one hit versus two is kind of a big deal. Of course, GFL2 is a gacha game at the end of the day, so I wouldn't be surprised if this does turn out to be the case. Not that I think there's anything wrong with that. This is mostly a waifu collection simulator. Taking a quick look at progression, the max level cap of your dolls and weapons are tied to player level, so you can't really overlevel from the start. Dolls do have the ascension mechanics where you need to feed some resources to extend the level cap. I saw a cool level up animation when I first began playing, and I was curious to see if the animation is actually unique to every character. And from what I've seen, it is. That's some pretty impressive stuff. Weapons, on the other hand, do not seem to have ascensions, so it's a straight shot to whatever the level cap is. You can put up to 4 attachments on them, and this effectively serves as the RNG artifact system. However, set bonuses go up to 3, so you're allowed to have an off piece, and you're allowed to select which set to farm for in its respective stage. There's of course limit breaks for whales, weapons can be calibrated and dolls fortified up to 6 additional times. Each fortification levels one of their skills. Dolls have a third tab where you can unlock certain passives and activate up to 3 at a time. Stamina caps out at 180, and autoplay is unlocked whenever you clear a stage with 3 stars for the first time. There's no caveats to sweeping, so this makes your daily routines extremely easy. One of the biggest tips I can give to almost every gacha game is to simply complete your dailies. They usually account for one of the largest sources of XP, since this is meant to reinforce you to come back every day. The game does let stamina overflow and store it for you, so that's another plus. There is also the dispatch system, where you have to first clear a set of missions to use a doll in dispatch. These take 20 hours and provide its own currency to use in the shop. This is actually a bit more well thought out than I expected. There's a bit of passive resource generation, and you can even trade in some common resources for a special currency to roll on a separate gacha for. And you can even get an SSR here alongside SR weapons. Though the game doesn't tell you the exact rates for this. Most of the time though, you're just gonna get junk. The resource management and progression are extremely streamlined as opposed to the first game. It's way easier for new players to understand and adapt to the mechanics. And one of the primary reasons why the first Girls Frontline doesn't get many newcomers is due to its complexity just being too overwhelming. If you played any MiHoYo game, you'll have little to no problems adapting here. Speaking of similar mechanics, let's talk about the goods. Character rarity is split among standard and elite dolls, or just SR and SSR. You use the collapse piece currency for 150 a pull. Genshin is not the first to use the 50-50 system, but it's certainly the one that popularized it. GFL2 uses the exact same thing. 0.6% base chance for an SSR, every 10 pull guarantees an SR or higher. The hard pity is at 80, but the soft pity starts at 58 pulls. If you lose the coin flip and get spooked, then the next elite doll is guaranteed to be the rate up. We've seen this song and dance in the past, you know exactly how this works. Pity does carry over across the same banner types and consecutive ones. Pulling a total of 260 times on the standard banner will let you choose an SSR in the standard pool. This screen on the probability list is actually slightly misleading as it shows a 1.89% of an SSR, except this accounts for the consolidated rate, factoring in the soft pity. The weapon banner, yes, there's a separate weapon banner type, has a 75% rate up chance. You miss that, next one is the rate up. Soft pity at 50, hard pity at 70. These are the facts regarding how the gacha system works. Something I like to do is roughly estimate the total amount of currency needed to guarantee a rate up of your choice. So if we were to assume an average of 70 pulls for an SSR character, accounting if we lose the coin flip, that's a total of 21,000 gacha currency or 18,000 for a weapon if we use the 60 pulls average respectively. The generosity of a gacha system is not something anyone can just judge at face value. Everyone will have their own preferences. Some people think that having a separate gear banner is a red flag and will not even try the game because of that. Some people really don't like coin flip rate ups. There's a lot of things you have to consider to really know how generous this system is. I mean, look, I got 2 SSRs in one multi. That must mean the gacha is really generous. Also, I'm playing on launch day, and while there's a lot of rewards thrown our way, I don't know how generous they would be if someone joined like 2 months down the line. That being said, if you're okay with any MiHoYo games gacha, then I don't see how you can't be okay with this. We'll briefly go over monetization. You got your 30-day welcomes for $5 and a smaller pack for $2 that gives additional rewinds per stage. Honestly, I wouldn't even count this as paywalling quality of life, since needing to use rewinds at all is a major skill issue. Their premium battle pass sells for $10, and it's one of those games where it'll berate you every time you claim the rewards to tell you about all the awesome stuff you're missing out on. You do get a 5-star weapon selector. Weirdly enough, in a system like this, these weapons would truly be considered pay to win, because there's literally no way to get them unless you buy the battle pass. Very typical stuff, I have no problems with this. The repeating rewards after the default battle pass level cap is also a nice touch. Pulling duplicates also grant a separate currency that you can accumulate to eventually select a 5-star weapon too, so that's a bonus. You got your usual suspects of other paid packs, and after looking at them, I don't think they're actually that poorly priced. $50 for 60 pulls and a 5-star weapon? That's pretty good. The worst value deals are directly buying the gacha currency as you might imagine. Credit tokens convert to collapse pieces at a 1-to-1 ratio, and to secure a rate-up SSR from scratch, you need around $200, which is very typical and I have no problems with. Now, here is the second avenue in which the game makes money, and that goes to its cosmetics shop. See, I haven't mentioned the dormitory system yet, but given that Girls Frontline 2 is mostly a waifu collection game, This is your opportunity to admire your dolls. Each has their poses that are unlocked as you level them up, and tapping on them will initiate an animation. It's not as customizable as something like Snowbreak's dorm mode, but to be fair, you had to pay $20 for that. You can move the camera around to discover the developer's thinly veiled foot fetish, and even set your custom angle as the main menu background. As for what's there by default, I actually thought there would have been more to the dorm mode. While the textures and movement fluidity are very impressive, I thought there would be unique interactions or animations if you tap the character in certain spots. Something tells me that this system will be expanded upon with paid skins, but that's just me. The premium cosmetics can range anywhere between $10 to $20. You can buy them with the purchasable tokens or with cash directly. Regardless of what your opinions on skins are, I would say if a skin costs $20, then I better see some new animations, voice lines, and dorm interactions. Expect to see a lot of paid skins, and this technically makes it a paywalled feature because there's no way you can get these for free. At least this game doesn't do $60 skin gachas. That would be really stupid. There's still a couple questions I had regarding the game, and these are not something I can gather from a first impressions review. For example, do any limited dolls move to the standard banner? Is it pulling a Genshin where all released SSRs are limited? How about events and archiving? I did see a past events tab, so I'm assuming that old events are preserved in some way. But what about the rewards you get? I did try out the first event at launch, and it mostly follows PGR and Snowbreak's UI and scheduling. They did give out a free limit broken SR welfare and weapon that's actually pretty good. And there were a few minigames that had variety, including this one where it turns into a third-person arcade shooter that's a completely unique idea in the gacha genre and no other game has ever done. In this last portion of the review, I want to go over my overall thoughts and recommendations on the game. The marketing agency for Girls Frontline 2 actually reached out to me regarding a sponsor, but I usually have two conditions that need to be met before I can agree to it. The first is that the game must pass what I consider to be a quality product. That may be how the game is maintained, the generosity of the gacha, how much FOMO there is, etc. Exilium absolutely passes this bar. In some regards, it even exceeds it. There was a tweet that mentions that the global servers had 2 million players on day 1, and I have no doubt that this game will be financially supported by the developers and its player base for years to come. And don't get me wrong, as a gacha game, GFL2 is an amazing experience. This brings us to the second condition, which is more subjective. I must be personally interested in playing the game for at least a month in the near future. As it currently stands, I cannot see myself playing this game. One of the main comparisons I can make to Girls Frontline 2 is Snowbreak. Both are what I consider as gooner gacha games. And look, there's nothing wrong with indulging in a little bit of fan service. Both developers are presumably passionate about their products, both feature extremely detailed 3D models and animations, both follow very similar update schedules, both have fair gacha rates and monetize through cosmetic skins. The main differentiator is that this game has XCOM gameplay. I would recommend Girls Frontline 2 the same way as I do Snowbreak. It's a whole lot of eye candy with an intriguing story. Simple combat that's just the right amount of complexity to keep things fresh, and ways to shell out your wallet without being too predatory. Girls Frontline 2 Exilium gets my fabled first impressions rating of play it. And that's my review. If you have something to say, put them down below. If you want to catch more gacha related content, you already know what to do. Thank you for watching, and as always, have fun out there.